Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Tottenham Way podcast, hot on the heels of a magnificent 90 minutes at the Etihad. Spurs have done it again. They've played two, they have won two, they've scored 5 goals, they've conceded no goals. Back-to-back clean sheets in the league, another win at Manchester City. Can we play them every week, please? I'm a delighted Marcus Buckland. I was in therapy earlier this week after the Eberechi Eze incident. Who needs Eberechi Eze? We are top of the league. And George Sessions is here to reflect on a magnificent 90 minutes. And George, I've written down a lot of notes, a lot of pluses. Aside from the result itself, what was the biggest positive or the biggest positives as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, I mean, who needs Eberechi Eze, as you said? What a brilliant result, and what a lift all the fans are going to get from this result because it's been a tough week, hasn't it? We've all been a little bit down in the dumps the last few days, seeing the news about Eberechi Eze. But I think the biggest takeaway from this is, and without blowing my own trumpet, Spurs have got a good team. They have a very good team. They don't have a very good squad in my mind, but they have got a very good team. And this does just show, this team can compete with everyone in this league. Just give it a bit of help. Give it a bit of help. A couple more signings, and Thomas Frank, the way he's adapted with these 3 games, who knows, what Tottenham could potentially be able to do if they can get a couple of really big additions over the line during the next 10 days. So I think it really does highlight and just kind of reinforce that kind of belief that this is a very good team, and if they can be supported, and if they can stay fit, which is obviously crucial and will be difficult, then maybe Spurs can have a really good season, and they can back up this Europa League win, because it feels like all the kind of momentum and belief had kind of been lost with the Europa League win, given how the transfer window has gone. But Thomas Frank keeps ticking along. He's Thomas Frank train started pretty well.
It really has. It's been fantastic. I mean, I wrote down pressing. I thought they pressed magnificently at the right times today. The balance between the defence and the attack, which was essentially non-existent last season, that was so much more noticeable. Leadership, there are players out there who are taking responsibility, and that again is something that we've been crying out for a very long time. Set pieces. The previous management didn't take those terribly seriously. This group do. And I noticed a couple of tweets, Alistair Gold in particular, who was saying he was looking closely today at the Tottenham dugout and how it's Frank primarily who's leading the communications, but he's allowing his other coaches to talk too when they have a point to make. There seems to be a real understanding between everybody involved as to exactly what is required. And I guess that then translates into performances such as today. And I'm a negative individual, and even with 80 minutes gone, I'm thinking, oh, we're going to get a repeat of PSG here. But actually, as the minutes tick by, I kind of relaxed. City weren't that good. We made them look pretty ordinary. But this really, I think we should stress, shouldn't we, George? This was a totally deserved performance. And actually, if one or two players had been a little more clinical going forward in the second half, we could have replicated last season's 4-0 win, I reckon.
Yeah, I think you're right. Actually, it was there was a couple of more chances for Richarlison, wasn't there? And he was brilliant once again. A strange week for him. He was kind of linked with a move away on Wednesday. There's I personally found it quite strange timing of talk him going to Crystal Palace as part of this Eze deal. So he put that completely to one side, produced another really good performance. Obviously, the key part for the first goal, running down the right and crossing in for Johnson again. And I guess maybe that's where we should start Brennan Johnson. That was a big call. I kind of didn't expect Thomas Frank to play Brennan Johnson today from the off. Just assumed it'd be the 3-5-2 that we saw against PSG, where that worked so well. And I did actually ask him yesterday on Friday, that 3-5-2 has worked so well before for him against Man City, and obviously worked so well against PSG. Do you just do it anyway, even though there's no surprise factor, or do you look for the surprise factor? And he kind of teased that it could be 3-5-2, it could be 4-3-2-1, and I think we all expected 3-5-2, and he changed it up, put Johnson in as the extra, well, kept Johnson in, I should say, as the extra wide man. Kudos out on the right, Richarlison down the middle. Didn't go with a 3 at the back, and it worked really well. I thought Spurs started the game very strongly. Vicario had a couple of big saves to make, to be fair. And they're really key moments, actually, the 2 saves from Marmoush, particularly the second one. But then the goal comes at perfect time, sort of 10 minutes before half time. And it's a brilliant finish from Johnson as well. He deserves huge credit because Richarlison does really well the ball's kind of a little bit behind him. He's got Rico Lewis sliding in. It's not the easiest finish, and he made it look very easy, and just what Brennan Johnson does. So that was fantastic way to start the first half.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I've got a big, I've put Brennan Johnson's name down and lots of question marks because we know what he sometimes doesn't do. We also know that he's going to pop up and score goals. I find him an infuriating player in some ways, but as you rightly say, it was a good cross, but he had work to do and he finished it brilliantly. I also thought in the second half there was one moment where I think Spurs were 5-on-4 and he decided to shoot from 30 yards, and I'm thinking, come on, Brennan, no. But if he keeps popping up, and I made the criticism the other week that he tends to score against lesser opposition, bit of a flat track bully. Well, to score at Manchester City dismisses that notion. I'm intrigued as well. I saw your tweet beforehand. I was fully expecting it to be 5 at the back. And then the one thing that intrigued me as the game went on, George, because I've banged on about this, but some Brentford supporters I've spoken to have said Thomas is brilliant. The one thing he struggled with in the past, in his Brentford days, was holding on to leads. And I kept thinking in the second half in particular today, are you going to bring Danso on? Are you just going to strengthen things at the back? And he did for the last 4 minutes, but I guess you can't criticise him in any way. But it makes him all the more interesting because it did look as though today would be a classic example of him going to the 5 as he did so successfully, except for the last 10 minutes against PSG.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was kind of had the same feeling as that second half ran on, kind of thinking when's he going to make the subs. And I guess in that Super Cup final, he did take off João Palhinha, around the 70-minute mark. Kudos come off the same time, and it was telling that those two guys stayed on pretty much until the end. And look, we should mention João Palhinha. There's so many good performances today, but he was really, really good, alongside Pape Sarr as well, who's had a phenomenal start to the season. And it was those two really crucial for the second goal. I did kind of wonder if there might be a little kind of opportunity for Spurs with James Trafford in there, Nico Gonzalez, lots of new kind of partnerships there. And it's a poor decision by James Trafford to pass into that area, even if Nico Gonzalez is asking for it. But brilliant from Pape Sarr, Richarlison very alert, and quite striking really that João Palhinha is that far up the pitch from a Man City goal kick. We're thinking of him as Spurs' number 6. Ordinarily you'd think he's going to be like in front of the centre backs, Christian Romero and Mickey van der Ven, but he's pressing all the way up the pitch. Kind of that, as you mentioned, that pressing, it was so evident throughout the game, and the fitness levels were brilliant as well. So that João Palhinha deserves huge credit for that finish and being in the area as he was. And we actually spoke to him after the PSG penalty shootout defeat, and he sort of spoke about Spurs can achieve special things this season. He sort of really, really believed, and he is one of the two, only signings they have made. That's really going to boost the first team, and it just shows you though, two brilliant signings come in, and it does lift the level, and it kind of gives you a teaser about what potentially Spurs could do if they can be busy during these next 10 days. But yeah, it was telling for me that him and Kudos stayed on for the majority of the game and only come off towards the end, and it was Solanke and Odegaard coming on for Richarlison and Johnson, like for like replacements. No kind of change in the system, as you allude to, with Kevin Danso potentially coming on and going free at the back. It was kind of telling. Maybe Thomas Franklin kind of learned from that Paris Saint-Germain game not to kind of change the system when it is working so well, to change personnel.
Yeah, listen, I think he got everything absolutely right. Palhinha is a superb signing. It was really interesting afterwards. He was asked, why have you come to the club? And obviously he wants to play in the Premier League again, but he said it's the manager. And Spurs have struck gold. There is absolutely no doubt about that. And I'm almost tempted now to those who had a go at me last season. And I know I was harsh on Big Ange, but I always felt that a change had to be made. And there will be those who say, hang on, 2 years ago exactly, Tottenham were top of the league under Ange, so let's not get carried away. He made a great start, but I just see so many improvements so quickly. We don't want to get carried away because things can change very quickly. But Palhinha is a great signing. Kudus is a great signing. The Eze thing was awful. It was particularly bad for me because I was chatting to this guy I just met. He's an Arsenal fan. And I went, oh, mate, I'm sorry about Eze. And I swear to God, an hour later, he comes running into the room and goes, we've got him. And it was the embarrassment. It's the embarrassment more than anything else, I think, because, yeah, he's a fine player and we could have done with him. But I'm actually, not completely gutted that Eze as a player is not coming. It's just the fact that he was coming and we've been made to look like absolute mugs. And, Thomas Frank also, after his interview today, after the game, George said he trusts the board. He's confident that a couple of signings will come in. I'm thinking now, City, having looked at us, are going to go, well, we're not giving you Savigno. You're good enough as it is. But what's your hunch? What's going to happen? Who's coming in before the window closes?
Yeah, just to as I am the number one fan of the Ange Postecoglou fan club, he did win 4-0 at City, so he's technically better than Thomas Frank. But I obviously
Fair
jest.
enough.
But no, Thomas Frank's made a brilliant start. I said to him yesterday, you've come in, it's a tricky situation. You've won 3-0 against Burnley, brilliant performance against PSG. You sort of feel let down by the transfer window, and he obviously kind of towed the party line, as he's going to say. He's only so many weeks into the job. He's not going to be kicking his heels just yet. But no, I think the Savigno point is interesting. I kind of expected that after this match, talks would, maybe ramp up this week in a similar vein, maybe with Liverpool and Newcastle playing Monday night. Maybe Isak talks ramp up after that, just to kind of avoid any awkwardness. But Savigno is definitely someone that Spurs really like, and I think Thomas Frank really likes him as well. So it makes a lot of sense for them to now go for that because they missed out on Eze. So I think this is probably the week where we're either going to see the movement that we expect with that one, or it will be another one that kind of falls on deaf ears. And I guess we should sort of mention there was various chants today against Daniel Levy. We want Levy out. It was very noticeable on the TV. There was a good 2 or 3 occasions that happened. And I think fans, as pleased as they'll be with this result, it doesn't kind of change the fact that this summer window has been a real disappointment. You've seen all the big 6 clubs spend so much money. Spurs beating Man United was meant to be Spurs' kind of sliding doors moment where they kicked on, and Man United have spent God knows how much money, way more than Spurs. So the frustration around Daniel Levy being the figurehead for the club, being the guy that's seemingly tasked with the key negotiations for these deals, the frustration is going to remain there, even if Spurs do win games, because fans want to see this squad improved. And there is, if you think, if Eze had been there today, it's just another great option to either come off the bench or to be starting. And at the minute, Spurs have got 1 game a week. Thomas Frank's going to relish this scenario. He's going to have a whole week to prepare for these games, like he will the Bournemouth game next week. The tricky aspect is clearly when it's going to be 3 games a week. Aston Villa on a Sunday, Real Madrid on a Wednesday, Arsenal at home on a Saturday. That's going to be crunch time. And Thomas Frank's going to have that throughout most of September, most of October, most of November, most of December, most of January. So it's not going to just be a 1 month thing and then he goes back to 1 game a week. That is why it is so crucial that Spurs can bring in at least a player, realistically 2 players. I would say Thomas Frank said yesterday he was hopeful a player would come in before the end of the window, but I think they probably need a couple, and it is massive for Spurs. And I think until, unless we kind of see real movement this week, I'd imagine that there could be more chance against Daniel Levy for this Bournemouth game, as well as Spurs have started, 2 wins out of 2 in the Premier League. A great performance against PSG. Fans still want the squad to be boosted, and they're right to expect that because Spurs won the Europa League final, qualified for the Champions League, earned 100 million revenue down the line because of that. That money should be spent, and we know the money's there because they had it for Morgan Gibbs-White, they had it for Eze, so it is, the money's on ice, just needs to be spent properly.
Yeah, and that's partly a problem, of course, because all the potential selling clubs know that we've got the money, and he's going to have to bite the bullet, and if necessary, just give Beyonce an extra concert next year, or I don't know, ramp up the go-kart program. But the money is not an issue, and we said this a few days ago, George, but it's critical now because we have got a really good squad. And you look at who was on the bench today. I mean, Bergvall obviously came on. Archie Gray, I'm a massive fan of. We're going to get Kulusevski back eventually, although I did hear a couple of days ago it might not be until the start of next year, which is disappointing, but hopefully he'll come back better than ever. There's the nucleus of such a good squad, and that's why it would be such a waste, such an outrageous dereliction of responsibility and duty at the top of the club not to strengthen now. And frankly, Mr. Levy, if you have to sit back and feel as though you're not getting the best possible deal for a player, it doesn't matter. Get him in. I don't know exactly how things go. And the one thing I'll say about the whole Eze move, he was a gooner. He is a gooner. He always will be a gooner. And Ange Postecoglou said it. Thomas Frank repeated it on Friday. If someone really doesn't want to be at the club, we don't want to have them at the club. So in some ways, maybe we had a lucky escape there, and the situation just fell into Arsenal's lap. But Spurs allowed it to, of course, because the negotiations went on. And I heard from a very reliable source on Sunday at Chelsea, where Palace were playing, that Steve Parish was quite loudly moaning about the way Daniel Levy was going about the negotiation. So anyway, it's fallen through, but I agree with you. I just so want something good to happen, because the club's in a great place. I mean, I was trying to look back at the last time we kept successive clean sheets. It may have been, somebody said to me it was February of this year. I certainly remember early on in the first season under Andrew when we started well. We definitely had a few clean sheets then, but it's such a rarity. I did get scared a couple of times today, obviously the way City conceded their second goal, and there were one or two moments, George, when we started mucking around at the back again. And I've always been accused of shouting at the clouds here, this is the modern system, you play out. No, mate, no. Don't, just get rid of it. They're much better than that, but just a couple. There was that one awful moment, wasn't there, in the second half? And again, Thomas was saying at half-time, we've got to make our correct decisions. They got that one wrong. But I find it very hard otherwise to criticise at all. This is pinch me, mate. I'm in fantasy world, but we're going to win the league, aren't we?
Spurs top of the league in August again. It's nothing new, to be fair. It does happen quite often. No, I think there was a few scary moments in the second half, but not as many as kind of I anticipated. I mean, Mickey van der Ven slid in on Phil Foden brilliantly, didn't he, after a great run by Jeremy Doku? But there wasn't kind of huge amounts. I think Rodri come on and had a header, didn't he? And Haaland missed a really good chance at the end of the first half, but it didn't feel like City really swamped Spurs. And there does seem sort of a genuine love for defending. You can kind of see that with the kind of reaction. I think João Palhinha in the first half made a block and then was kind of celebrating the block. We've seen Pedro Porro do that plenty of times with Christian Romero, and they've all spoken about, the managers come in and said we need clean sheets and that the big focus on clean sheets, but they do look so disciplined and so organised. And I guess there was kind of, various kind of interesting tactical parts of today. When Man City had goal kicks, Christian Romero was dropping so deep on Erling Haaland, pretty much on his own, just kind of backing himself to win that battle. And then there was, other points where the back four was so tightly together. We're used to kind of seeing, fullbacks quite wide, even the centre backs being quite wide, and there being a big gap in the middle at times. But there was, they was all moving along as a four, almost in that kind of tightrope that I think a certain club in North London used to speak about under George Graham, former Tottenham manager. But no, the way the team is defensively at the minute is really, really pleasing. And I think, that as I kind of referenced, Thomas Frank had a bit of a difficult press conference on Friday. He got a lot of questions chucked to him about the transfer window and Eze. And, Tom Allner actually said to him about, if you don't sign a number 10, do you kind of believe you can adapt? And I guess we are kind of seeing him adapting, Thomas Frank, at the minute. The fact they haven't got a number 10. He had to go with that midfield three again of Pape Sarr, Rodrigo Bentancur and João Palhinha, and kind of relying on the creativity to come from the wingers, or Pedro Porro, putting so many brilliant crosses today. And I guess that's kind of, hopefully that's not going to be the case, but that is the comfort that you feel like Thomas Frank has already shown, and hopefully he continues to show that he can get the best out of this group, no matter what kind of shape they're in. And if Spurs don't manage to get the big number 10 player that we want, albeit there's not a huge amount of options out there now, I would say, you'd kind of hope that he can continue to get the best out of the squad, as he has already shown it over these 3 games. And I think he just deserves a huge amount of credit, doesn't he? Three games, 3 different performances, 3 different systems, different lineups, different substitutions, different heroes in each game, really. Kind of Richarlison was a hero last week. Today it was João Palhinha and Brennan Johnson. The Super Cup, almost was the set pieces were the heroes, when their set piece coach was a hero that day. So it's really, really encouraging, that kind of aspect. And I know we're kind of a broken record here, but just feel like if this squad can get a little bit more into it, a really, really very, very good player that's going to either come into the starting 11 or be the first option on the bench. Who knows where that could take Spurs? Because at the moment, I kind of see this squad, because of the grind of Champions League and everything that's going to come with that, maybe being a top 7, top 8 squad. I'm not that hopeful they can get in the Champions League again next season, but 1 or 2 more additions, and that could be the difference that Spurs need. So it's really not a time to kind of sit on your hands if you're the club. Sense this moment that you've got a really good nucleus, as you said, Marcus, and go for it. Put the money there, and hopefully they do.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, my technical equipment is about to pack up, so we'll have to cut this a bit short. But yeah, I just want to reiterate. I mean, Porro occasionally defensively, I still worry a bit, and he was quite isolated in the first 20 minutes in particular against Marmoush. But Spurs as a unit at the back was so impressive. I just love Jed Spence as well. Occasionally his decision making is a little bit suspect, but it's just the way he goes about his business. He looks so calm and so cool and so untroubled. And that midfield today was a great mix, a really good mix. You're right, the manager got everything right. It's going to be fascinating to see what he does next week against Bournemouth. The fixtures, I mean, you don't want to get carried away, but the fixtures over the next few weeks are encouraging. So let's see what the board can do. Thomas Frank says he
West
trusts
Ham,
them.
don't we?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, we've got Bournemouth, West Ham. We've got Wolves early on. I don't think we play another sort of top 6 side till about November. So, I'm guilty. I've already said on this pod we're going to win the league. Okay, I'm getting carried away. But listen, things are looking encouraging. George, thank you very much indeed. Please do subscribe, by the way, to our YouTube channel, and you get an opportunity to see how good-looking George is. How young. I got the reaction actually yesterday from the YouTube. Oh, how young the two Toms are. People didn't say anything else. I assume they mean that's in comparison to me, the grizzled old fool that's seen Tottenham for too many years and continues to be far too pessimistic. I'm not. I'm really, really bubbly about this. I just, without going on, buy a couple of players, and this is going to be a great season. Do like the podcast. Please send in any questions. We'll be back again next week. I'm Marcus Buckland. Come on, you Spurs.